Everyone, Mr. G here. Today we are going to be talking about the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand and how that led to the start of World War One. So to start, you can open up the Archduke Ferdinand graphic organizer under Google Classroom for notes. So let's get started. So first off, why does this matter? So the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand is going to be the spark that sets off World War One. It's almost universally recognized as the event that's going to really kick off the conflict. This assassination is going to trigger the alliances that we saw before between all of those different European countries. So they'll come to each other's aid when one of them is attacked. We're going to see mass military mobilization as a result of the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, which of course will lead to 4 years of war. Horrible, horrible war. And then afterwards, a lot of the things we'll be talking about today, and especially in the next couple days, will lead to World War II. Some of the factors that will lead to World War II. And our lesson essential question for today, our big question is, why was the Archduke Ferdinand assassinated and how did this start World War One? And by the way, this is what you're looking at there on the right is the Serbian flag in 1910. And Serbia is going to have a very important part to play in this story. So I want to approach today's lesson as more of a story. I find that that's a little bit more useful for topics such as this. So I kind of want to introduce um, these people as characters first, essentially. So first, I want to talk about the Archduke Ferdinand and his early life. So he was born in the middle of the American Civil War. So that's kind of your time frame. So we're talking about 1863. So Abraham Lincoln's president, and the Archduke Ferdinand has been born. It's kind of interesting to think about two historical events taking place at the same time, but I find it interesting. So Archduke Ferdinand is the nephew to the Austrian-Hungarian Emperor Franz Joseph. And he, due to some family issues, is now the heir to the throne to the Austria-Hungarian Empire, meaning that when Emperor Franz dies or abdicates or resigns, he will become the new emperor. However, there is a problem because the Archduke falls in love. This is like, by the way, this is going to end up sounding like a bad Hallmark movie, at least this slide. So the Archduke Ferdinand, after serving in the military, meets the lovely Countess Sophia Shotek. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, but I'm sorry. And they fall in love. This is a picture of the two of them. He's got some great facial hair. They look very happy. Um, Unfortunately for them, the Countess is not of high enough royal blood, according to Emperor Franz Joseph, who says of the proposed marriage, how about no, let's not do that. So the Emperor Franz decides, I don't want the Archduke to marry her because she's not of the proper royal descent, even though she is a countess. Now this causes an unprecedented amount of political turmoil because according to the historians, Archduke Ferdinand was madly in love with the Countess Sophia and refused to follow the emperor's orders and basically disagreed with him over it. This disagreement got so bad that the Pope got involved. You heard me right, the Pope. Pope Leo the 13th actually stepped in and told the emperor. He also got some other European leaders to pitch in on the convincing, but he told them to let them get married, which is pretty amazing coming from the religious leader of the Vatican and the Catholic Church. I just think that's very interesting. So my question to you, and you can write this down, your answer in the graphic organizer anywhere, is why do you think Pope Leo the 13th would do this? Because apart from maybe wanting to play matchmaker, there is a reason. So you guys can pause it here and then write down your reasoning. Okay, so Pope Leo the 13th would do this because all of the families in Europe are all connected, all of the ruling families. So if one family is is having political instability or political turmoil, it might affect other families or other royal dynasties. If one empire starts to look like it's crumbling or falling apart, then the people of other empires might notice that, and that's dangerous if you're in control. So, the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, I'm going to talk a little bit about him, a little bit more about him. So, after he, grew up and he married the Countess, he became a pretty publicly cold, short-tempered, and sharp-tongued figure. He was not very nice, according to most public records of him. He was also rumored to be insane due to the effects of inbreeding. Royal families would intermarry cousins, which would have some negative, severely negative effects on diseases or genetic disorders. So it is rumored that Archduke Franz Ferdinand was actually insane. Um, that is not completely verified, but definitely something that historians have talked about. So the Austria-Hungarian Empire um, is a dynasty and an empire that ruled over a lot of different ethnic groups. So these ethnic groups are under one flag, but that doesn't mean they agree over everything. So they disagree over religion, politics, nationality, where people belong. And then this here is a map of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And this, everything you see that's colored is part of that empire. So these are the linguistic groups all over and ethnic groups all over the empire. We've got everyone from Italian speaking people to Romanian speaking people and Serbian people, hint, hint, Serbia, all the way up to the Polish. So we've got a lot of different people under the Austro-Hungarian banner. Now, my question is, if you live here, I apologize for that, if you live here in Serbia, what is your concern? Because let's look at this map right here. You've got Serbians living in a massive area right here in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So if you're a Serbian living in an independent Serbia, you might be concerned about how these people are treated or if they're going to lose their loyalty to maybe their ethnic group over a loyalty to this empire. So, next I want to talk about our next character in this story. So we've met the Archduke and a little bit of his backstory. Now we're going to meet the assassin. Uh, this is Gavrilo Princip when he's a very young man. This is one of the earliest photos I could find of him. And we're going to also talk about the Black Hand. So Gavrilo Princip is born into a very poor family. He lived in a house that was essentially a dirt floor with walls that were rocks stacked on top of each other. That's according to a British historian. He was incredibly smart, however, and outstanding in school. So he rose above his situation and did incredibly well in high school, incredibly well in college. But while in college, he joined a secret society known as the Black Hand. And these guys are bad news. So they were a group of former Serbian army officers and government officials, and they're a terrorist organization. So they'll bomb places, kill people, kidnap, form raids with the goal of liberating Serbians from Austria-Hungarian Empire and Ottoman Empire and the Ottoman Empire. Their direct translation from the Serbian is Union or Death. That's their other title, essentially. And their logo does not have a ton of union. It's mostly death. We've got skulls, knives, a grenade, and poison. Although they don't actually look that threatening when you see pictures of them. I do like their outfits, however. They have some cool capes. That being said, they are going to help be responsible for one of the greatest conflicts of the 20th century, 21st century, 20th century. Sorry. Okay, the assassination. Let's get started. So, part one of the assassination, the setting. Let's set that up first. Where we are, we're in June. It's summer of 1914. We're in the capital of Bosnia, which is Sarajevo, and that's right here. So there's Serbia, there's Bosnia, and then we're in Sarajevo right here, the capital. And that is the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which includes the region of Bosnia. So Ferdinand and Sophie have arrived despite warnings of terrorist activity. They arrive in the morning, I believe around 10 o'clock, and there are warnings that there is the Black Hand terrorist group active in the region. There is actually a six-man team active, and Gavrilo Princip is one of them. So, despite the warnings, the Archduke and his wife get in a motorcade and they set out for an official state reception in an open roof car. So while on the way, the first part of the assassination attempt takes place and fails. A member of the Black Hand throws a hand grenade, at the Archduke's car, but it bounces off. He misses, and it falls underneath a different car. It explodes and injures a crowd of civilians, which will that'll come back later. So keep that in mind. The Archduke is quoted as saying, "So you welcome your guests with bombs?" Question mark. Because he was not quite thrilled to have bombs thrown at him on a diplomatic visit. So the second part of the assassination is the most famous part, of course, and this is when the Archduke and the Countess continue their trip and decide to visit the wounded in the hospital. So despite the security or officers that are with him telling him we should probably leave, they decide to continue the trip. On the way to the hospital to visit the wounded, the lead car in the motorcade, takes a wrong turn and stops in the middle of the street, 5 feet away from Gavrilo Princip, completely by chance. So there was an alternate route that was suggested for the Archduke to take, but the driver in the first car in the motorcade didn't get the memo. So he takes a wrong turn, stops, and then 5 feet away on the original track is Gavrilo Princip. So what happens next is Gavrilo Princip fires a couple rounds, I believe 2 rounds, one striking the Archduke in the neck and Sophie in the stomach. So both the Archduke and Sophie are shot, and they are both killed, or they both die before reaching the hospital. And I believe Sophie will actually pass away first. One thing that is both disturbing and interesting is that Gavrilo Princip is a 19-year-old. He is incredibly young and assassinates the heir to one of the largest empires on planet Earth. So this is an incredibly unprecedented event. That a 19-year-old, I mean, if you think about that, it's incredibly young for someone to have this large of an effect on human history. Okay, so the aftermath. This is Gavrilo Princip's picture. As you can see, he is very young. Like he's not an older guy. He is 19 at the time, but is arrested immediately. This is a picture of him being arrested. He dies in prison at age 23 from tuberculosis. He's not executed because during this time period, the Austro-Hungarian law stated that unless you were 20, you couldn't be killed or executed. So what happens next is, with some diplomatic arguing, not really diplomacy, but more saber rattling, Austria and Hungary will declare war on Serbia in July of 1914. And now I normally don't ask you guys to memorize dates, but 1914 is an incredibly important date in history because that is the year that World War I starts. So this is when we see those alliances start to kick in. For example, Serbia and Austria are going to declare war. Russia is going to declare war on Austria. Germany is going to declare war on Russia. And France and England are going to declare war on Germany. So this is going to come back. We're going to come back to this graph here that you guys can review. And then lastly, what I want to mention before I end this is all of these people are related that are the heads of state. So they're cousins. The head of the German Empire, Kaiser Wilhelm II, is cousins with King George V of England, and he's cousins with the Tsar Nicholas II of Russia. So essentially, and I'll talk about this more later, this is a giant family dispute, World War I. And most of the heads of state are all related to Queen Victoria, which is interesting. So that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys are staying safe and that you enjoyed the video. And have a great rest of your day.